I think we have to talk about the bullpen a little, Zach. We'll talk about Cole Irvin after this conversation. I mean, it honestly, I guess it goes hand in hand, so we don't have to exclude Cole from the conversation. But despite how inconsistent and not great the offense was today outside of Gunnar, you have the bullpen, which, again, Cole Irvin gives you 2-run ball. That should be enough in its own right to win you a game. The bullpen only gives up 2 runs, but when your offense only scores 3, that is the difference in the game. Dylan Tate comes in and had a very long leash in this one, very long runway. Gives up a 2-run double, I think, as Danny Coulomb was warming, if I'm not mistaken. He was warming up to come in the game. 3 straight hits, if I'm not mistaken, given up by Dylan Tate. We've talked about this for a while, Zach, in terms of problem versus solution. This was actually your line. I've kind of stolen it, though, so sorry. But essentially, what Zach said was there are guys in this bullpen who need to be solutions, and we're kind of wondering, all right, who are the solutions going to be in the Orioles bullpen? Yeah. But there have been a lot of guys who at times have been the problem. And there have been plenty. I mean, look, Dylan Tate was a solution just a couple games ago. Last weekend, we were talking about Dylan Tate coming and having his stuff. He was the problem in the bullpen today. And again, when your offense can't put up enough runs, you say, all right, 2 runs from the bullpen, not a big deal. But it ended up being what lost them the game. And it wasn't the only thing. There were multiple tiers of what lost them this game today. I'm not going to pin it all on one area of the team or one guy. But it just felt like Tate should have been out before he was. And it ended up being too little too late by the time Danny Coulomb came in.
Yeah. Dylan Tate's outing was I'm not sure why he came out in the 7th. I understand why he came out in the 7th. The Orioles, during this stretch, they need to rest their bullpen as much as possible. You know, we're now in the stretch if they have 1 off day for the rest of June. For all of June, they have 1 off day. So I understand why they're trying to conserve guys as Kevin left. So I understand why they have to kind of rest guys, and they're trying to extend guys a little bit more in their out of their comfort zone, maybe pushing an extra batter or 2 to try to save extra guys from having to come in. But it didn't work out with Dylan Tate. And today is just I'm not going to blame Hyde because I think it's one of those unavoidable things. The bullpen is gassed. They've had 1 off day over the past 17 days or something. So the bullpen's tired. Obviously, Cole Irvin. Hyder. I think so too. I don't think Brandon Hyde was sitting there watching Dylan Tate going, oh, this is good. He's going to get out of it. I think they were sitting there hoping he'd get out of it, but knowing they needed to at least try to let him do it before the damage was done. Obviously, that didn't happen, and Danny Coulomb comes in once it's kind of a little too late. But overall, 30 games in 31 days right now. So it's just a brutal stretch for the bullpen. And Kevin, we're just talking a little bit about how I understand why Hyde kept in Tate because you want to help rest other guys in the bullpen. But I don't think I think it was the wrong decision. And I think after the first hit, he should have come out. After the second hit, he should have come out. And then after the third hit, it was too late. So it is one of those. That's just, can you blame Hyde? I don't. I think Hyde didn't exactly want to exhaust Tate the way he did. But Dylan Tate's looked awesome in his past outings. Like you said, Kevin, he was a solution for a few games for the bullpen, looking like we've even talked about on here, potentially 8th, 9th inning guy. That sucks. You know, those guys, that's going to happen, but it's just the consistency, what we're talking about. And that's the biggest issue for the Orioles. So what they have to figure out is who is the consistency? Where is it? Who can be those consistent guys? We talk about the circle of trust. It feels like the Orioles bullpen circle of trust changes daily. It feels like one guy's in it for a week and then he's out of it for 2 weeks. And then another guy who wasn't in it for 3 weeks comes into it for 2 weeks. It's just a revolving door of who do you trust in the Orioles bullpen?
Yeah, to add to your point, I think after the first hit, Hyde should have been walking out there. The second hit, he should have been running out there. And then the final one, I mean, he should have sprinted, which, I mean, I guess at the end of the day he did.
Yeah.
But to me, this bullpen was so taxed after these last two, and even dating back prior to the series. This bullpen, we've talked about the usage all year. Even guys who aren't on the team anymore, Mike Baumann being a guy who we talked about a ton at the beginning of the season about how much he was being used and how it might have been impacting performance. But you have Albert Suarez go 5 innings on Friday, and you have to get through 4 innings of bullpen ball. Then Kyle Bradish has a rough outing yesterday, and he goes 2 2/3. You have to use your bullpen for almost 7 innings of that game. So guys were gassed. I see Red saying that Cano and Webb on back-to-back days have pitched a ton already. You, Zach, I know you're the guru of the bullpen rest chart. Not a lot of guys were rested when it came to today. So it's like, right, who else do you have? But here's the other thing. Thiago Vieira is somebody that I don't think the Orioles trust right now. They're trying to figure him out, right? Seeing, okay, how can we get your stuff to be where we know that you can control it? The stuff is there, but they're essentially operating a man down in that bullpen for the most part right now because he came in and that it was 11-0 and gave up, I can't even remember, 3-4 runs and not even an out recorded. So usually in a situation, you'd have one extra guy, but if they brought in Thiago Vieira in that situation, maybe, miraculously he gets out of that, but the Orioles can't trust him in that situation yet. So it's like, who's rested? Yes, Dylan Tate should have been pulled earlier, right? I think we can all agree on that. But this bullpen is so taxed. And where's the comment quickly here? I can't remember who. Here we go. Michael, we are now in June. We are in the month that we had talked about for so long leading up to the season. 30 games. Well, it's one off day the entire month.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to find a way to manage this bullpen, whether it's matchup based, rest based. There's a lot that Brandon Hyde's going to have to do to make sure that these guys don't get burned out, taxed out, because there's still a lot of baseball left here. And to me, it just feels like everybody in that bullpen is tired. Everybody in every MLB bullpen is tired. It's not just an Orioles thing.
And I wanted to bring up Rob's point because it's exactly that.
Yes.
People complain about the Orioles bullpen of, hey, we don't have enough guys that we trust. We don't have, we need more bullpen help. Every team in Major League Baseball needs more bullpen help. Every single fan base, I can tell you, there are maybe 1 or 2 fan bases out there who are comfortable with their bullpen right now. And that'll probably change in 2 weeks. It is always changing for the bullpen. It sucks because it's such a high leverage position. So it's always under a microscope. So the second one thing goes wrong, like today, 1 bad inning, it was just 1 inning. And all of a sudden we're sitting here and I saw it. I think Rick put it up here. He says 1 timely hit and we're talking about a sweep. If the Orioles, if Mountcastle gets that double, hits a double, let's say with bases loaded, bottom 8, we're sitting here going, hey, bullpen, gave up some runs, but they did enough to get it done, and that's why we trust them. But the offense didn't come through, so now we're sitting here going, is the bullpen okay? It's just how the narrative changes around the bullpen. The bullpen can give up 1 run, 2 runs, and it can be the biggest 2 runs in the world or useless runs, and depending on that is how people kind of decide whether or not they trust these guys.
Yeah, or literally, as I said, they were 1 Jorge Mateo on base away from this at least being a tie game. And as Rick said, Mountcastle, even just singles, you probably score 2 in that. You'd hope at least you score 2 in that situation. Now, another thing that Michael says about the bullpen is the Orioles were counting on Tyler Wells to get back healthy and come back to the bullpen. And I think this is where we're starting to see some of the ripple effects of not only the Wells injury, but John Means as well, where you would have the luxury of maybe if Means was able to be back there and in that rotation and healthy, if you wanted to not go the 6-man rotation route when everybody's back. Kramer, of course, is another one where they have to use so many of these guys right now in the starting rotation, which is fine, right? Cole Irvin is a starter, fine. Suarez is a starter, fine. But if you have your guys available, you can move some of those options of the bullpen. We've seen Albert Suarez in that role. Irvin has been there. So it's a conversation now of there are so many guys. And Michael's just bringing up all the points today. Look at this. 3 guys in the bullpen right now with options. And so when you're trying to figure out where you go in-house, who's the guy that gets left out in that situation, right? Who's the guy that maybe gets DFA'd in that situation? Do you take that risk? With Bauman, I think everybody knew once they DFA'd him, he was not coming back to Baltimore because of how hot of a commodity he would be. So, exactly. Hoko saying Irvin would have been in that game yesterday with Bradish pulled. It's exactly where the injuries, it's not just they lost John Means, they lost Tyler Wells. That's a big storyline. But the other storyline is now it's step up time. Guys have to go up a ring on the ladder, and that's exactly what the conversation has to become now.
Yeah, it does. It's another. It just adds to the chaoticness of what we always talk about, where we're like, I would hate to have Mike Elias's job. Mike Elias right now, he's got like 7 guys that can be starters, but he's got to put some in the bullpen, and then guys go down. So now you're losing 2 of your best long relievers who, like Hoko Dad said, probably yesterday, Irvin comes in and gives you 4 innings. We're not even talking about a tired bullpen. We're talking about how rested the bullpen is. So it completely changes everything as these injuries go down. It changes not just the starting rotation, it changes the bullpen, and it changes multiple days, because yesterday Irvin comes in, shuts them down, whatever. Today we have a completely rested bullpen. Maybe different guys come in, maybe they go get the win. So it's just one of those things that you see one guy going down at such a kind of a swing position, as the Orioles have been using them in these, okay, we have starters that also can be relievers. You're now forcing them from being these like secret weapons of they can do both to, oh, now we need you to actually start. And it's not out of, okay, this is what's best. It's we actually need a starter.
Right. So just for some reference, Reds, thank you for this. For those who are wondering who the guys with options are, Tate, Aiken, and Cano are the guys all with options at this point. They're 3. So that moves into the other conversations, Zach. And again, it's like clockwork. We go live on the Ryan Ripken Show. We talk about trades, particularly bullpen trades. But I think it's even more relevant today, and even after losses, where it's like, okay, what do you do? It's kind of us regurgitating the same thing over and over again. I don't think one loss changes what our opinions are. Our opinions, by the way, are that they should make a trade in the bullpen, right? I don't know that it's going to be tomorrow. I don't know that it's going to be in a week. I don't know that it's going to be in 3 weeks. I think as we get closer to the trade deadline, the Orioles will have a better idea of what their options are. They will have probably brought up maybe a guy or two to see. Maybe we'll definitely probably have an answer on Thiago Vieira at that point. And then they can evaluate and say, hey, is this going to be a guy that we need to be in high leverage situations? This is a middle reliever that we need to go out there and get. Ryan's timeline has always been end of June. And I think that I would be shocked if they made a deal before the end of June, but I wouldn't be shocked to see maybe 1 or 2 more flyers on guys DFA'd if they need, especially if injuries continue to be an issue like this.
Yeah, and we talk about the inside in-house guys. You know, I always bring up Matt Crook. I think he honestly has an opportunity to come up here soon, but maybe they get bullpen help in the form of, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about it, Cade Povich. And it would be an unconventional way to get bullpen help, because in theory, you're bringing up Cade Povich so you can move Suarez and Irvin back into that bullpen. So there's a lot of different ways that I think they're going to try to figure this out and get more stability in the bullpen in-house. And they're going to go over every option. And at the end of the day, mid-July, early July, obviously late July is the trade deadline. So, but I think that really early July up to mid-July is where you're going to start to see the rumors really pick up of the Orioles are making phone calls. They're all in. They're going to get a reliever. And I think they do end up getting a high leverage reliever. The Orioles aren't getting Mason Miller. I know everyone's going to want to say that, but I see no reason why the Athletics trade Mason Miller. That's just me personally. I just don't see it happening. But a guy like Ryan Helsley, who we just saw with St. Louis, guys like that, I think are more of an option at this point. I think will be on the trade block and options for the Orioles going forward. But like we've said a million times, Kevin, these conversations don't start. Yeah. And talk about a guy, pitching in Colorado, if you're doing well in Colorado, that's even better. That's the icing on top, because that is the worst place to ever pitch in. But I think it's going to be a lot of guys coming in-house. The Brian Bakers, I know everyone gets kind of like cringes when I say Brian Baker in the chat every time. Yes, I think Brian Baker may get another chance here. I'm sorry, everyone, but this is what they do. I'm going through the I don't think Chase McDermott comes up. Obviously, you have guys like Nick Vespi, who has frequent flyer miles so high because of how many times he gets sent up and down. Yeah. There are just so many options. I think they see what they have still, and they're going to try that, because Michael Eis hates giving up assets. He's not going to give up assets if he doesn't think he needs to. So he's going to see what they need specifically, so that hopefully they can build on a specific spot, instead of being like, okay, we're just going to try to go get bullpen guys and see what happens.
Right. And again, I think once Kramer comes back, it will change part of the equation as well. But I like the points you made it and everybody else did, Zach, about unconventional way to get bullpen help. Go bring another starter up and move one of these guys back to the bullpen who can be pretty locked down. I think what do you think that, Zach? They'd move Suarez before Irvin back to the bullpen?
I don't know. It's a
tough call.
Yeah. I think honestly I could see them being on almost like a platoon type. Like, okay, if they're facing a team that has a lot of lefties, you go Irvin. If you got a team that has mostly righties, you go Suarez. But I think those two are interchangeable right now. I personally, and I'm a massive Cole Irvin truther, I really like Cole Irvin out of the pen. I don't know what it is, but like his ability to just come in and give you like 5 innings of just shut down ball if a pitcher gets out early. But the downside is he gives you performances like today where you should win, because he goes 6 1/3, 2 runs. So it's a good situation. It's not a great situation to be in, but there's a lot of talented arms right now that you're trying to see who can fit where. And, I think this, obviously we've said his name a bunch, but Povich will get his shot. I think this all but secures it, but I think they're going to try in-house and then they'll go from there.
I think that, the consensus, I think we're both in agreement on this, Zach, is they can't just sit by and do nothing here. I think it's at a point where, again, I don't mean trade, but just try to get some different options up. We don't know when Kramer's going to be back exactly, but I do think that will help.